Hello, hello, hello. It's me, Salina EsTitties.
Yes, that's right. Greeting us to the show is none other than Salina EsTitties. Welcome.
Hello.
Oh, I was so scared because that look you had. I was like menacing. Oh no, you know what I mean? Like you came up with the sunglasses on. And,
Well, I was fitting the vibe of the room, the space.
well, you were.
if
You
you-
were.
if
I
you-
forget how like sort of imposing some of the stuff can be. And
No, I love it. If you can't see, there is like vintage movie posters, records, vinyls, and I was telling him when I came in that it feels like my childhood because I grew up in the Castro with my gay uncles,
Yeah.
basically, and this was very much the vibe.
so the Castro in that era must have been wild because now. I'm not sure really about it now, but I know that San Francisco has gone through so many changes.
It's so different now. Like when I've gone to visit, I haven't been back. I moved down to San Francisco when I was like, I don't know, 8 or 9, but I grew up there as a kid in the 90s with my gay uncles. My parents were always working.
Yeah.
And it was like gay Mecca at the time. It was like run away to the Castro to be gay because that's where, it was like accepted, and as the AIDS epidemic was coming off of it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I grew up around rainbow flags and all of that. And my uncles were they loved music, they loved movies, they loved culture. So this feels like that. It feels like my
Well,
childhood.
I love that. That makes me very happy. And it's funny how I was drawn to gay culture for so many years before realizing I was queer. I was a bit of a late bloomer. That then it was like, oh, right. Okay. And someone was like, yeah, doesn't it make sense? I'm like, I see, yeah, I suppose. I get it. I see. Don't shame me.
Yeah, you can like whatever you like. And like I love people who are so knowledgeable and know their culture, like especially in music and movies, because like I said, my uncle's growing up like this. When I meet, and when I got sober, the majority of men that were like kind of taking me under their wing were like these older gay men who are queens and know their references and their
Yeah.
divas, and
Yeah.
so I've always felt so connected to people who know about that. And I love learning about the history of like art and music because I didn't really have anyone to teach me that. So to have gay men who are like who those men who
Oh,
are just
absolutely,
like
yeah.
take you under their wing and just start telling you about Judy Garland. Like I love that. That's my favorite thing.
It's my favorite thing as well. I love, and there's always more to learn.
Yeah.
And then I love passing on stuff to people because instead of like, if someone says they haven't seen something, instead of going like, oh my God, you haven't seen that? Go like, oh, that's great. You're going to love this. And then I'm also always jealous of them. Like, oh, you're going to get to experience that for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And also like I love when they have secret hidden facts like oh, did you know that Ewan McGregor actually has 3 nipples in this film, but it got cut off because the shark bit it in the ocean sequence, like I
Yeah.
love that stuff.
I know you said uncles. They were, were they both uncles by blood, or was one married to the other?
One was my mom's brother, and then the other one was Uncle Joe, his boyfriend at the time. And Uncle Joe worked at the local GNC in the Castro, and we'd walk over every day to go get a smoothie that he'd make us. And then
that's sweet.
we'd walk down Dolores Park and get a slice of pizza and just, wave hi to the neighborhood.
Yeah, and it's a colorful neighborhood for kids, right? And it's also probably the nicest neighborhood for kids because everyone's very welcoming.
It was, I don't know what it's like now necessarily because it's very tech booming and like, industrial now.
He's
It's
straight white bro.
very different. But back then, I just remember it being like such, like the first time I walked into WeHo, when I was 17 years old, I like took a stroll down to the bars
Yeah.
and like that feeling that I had seeing go-go boys on boxes and drag queens and at Rage inside and like seeing everyone drinking out in the bars, like that feeling that I first had was how I felt all the time when I was little in the Castro.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So, yeah, the boys' town kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that I like ran away to West Hollywood, like when I moved to Stockton for high school, and that's where my parents moved. But then when I graduated, I moved directly to WeHo, and like I've always kind of been in like big gay Mecca cities.
It doesn't sound like Stockton is one of those. What's Stockton like?
Stockton is the ghetto. It is wild. It's so interesting because like my parents, they're very young when they had me, so they both worked like 2 jobs trying to make it happen, and we moved out of the Bay Area to Stockton
okay.
when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
For my freshman year of high school, and they moved to this new development, which like cul-de-sacs and like brand new development in Stockton of like, like those cul-de-sacs that all look the same and the houses all look exactly
Kind
the
of
same.
a prefab
Yeah.
thing where they're like, we're going in, we're designing this, and then that's that.
It was like a brand new development, but like the thing was all these parents from the Bay Area moved there, and Stockton was already like a bad area. It was like, I think, voted the second most dangerous city to live in America, like back in the day. And but this new development was supposed to be like the new uprising, but
Yeah.
it's like all these people moved in, and then the kids just turned it into what it all was already, because there was like stabbings every day in high school. There were shootings all the
Oh my
time.
God.
We were in lockdown frequently. We ended up getting like the what are the sensor machines?
Oh yeah, the metal detectors.
Metal detectors, because people bring guns to school. It was crazy, but that was my high school.
So how did you cope during high school? Because, you know, you're gay. Did you know you were gay at that point? I have a feeling you did.
What? No. I actually found out I was gay when I was in 3rd or 4th grade. My uncles dropped me off at my friend's house that I was, you know, in elementary school with, and they drove off, and the guys were like, dude, your uncles have rainbow bumper stickers on the back of their car. And I was like, oh my God, they have them all over the apartment and outside, and the cat, and like,
They just love rainbows.
yeah. And I was like, it's so cool, right? And they're like, no, dude, he's a faggot. And I was like, oh, I don't know what that means. And he's like, well, let's go play handball. And that like little moment was when I realized, oh, gay is not okay, and like I might be that as well. And that was like the first moment I realized that. So in Stockton, you know, that kind of began my like, I always say like the sucking of my light, like the dimming of my light began in that moment a little bit.
Yeah.
Times before that too. We don't get too deep, but you know,
That's your next show.
By the
That's
time,
fine,
yeah, let's keep it a little lighter. By the time I got to high school in Stockton, it was like I did feel very like sunken in shell of a person. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I found choir sophomore year of high school, and then that led me into theater, and then I kind of developed, you know, the sense of who I was then.
So you were sort of able to extricate yourself through the auspices of theater and diving into these roles that kind of help you.
I played Johnny Casino in Grease.
Oh, wow.
The hand jive. That
Yes,
was like my first role and my introduction to theater. I had to play this like macho straight man, which is funny, but that was like the beginning of the end. Because look at her now. No.
Yeah, it was the hand jive. You know what? That's the gateway.
You know,
and all these straight people watching the Grease protesting of the drag queens, they don't know. They don't know.
Listen, their husbands, the women who are mad, their husbands are getting hand jived by me all the time.
You've been there. You've done the research. You're out in the field.
I'm a professional at the hand jive, buddy.
And incidentally, Grease, directed by a gay man, produced by 2 gay men.
This is the information that I like. Is it really?
Yes.
See, this is what I was talking about.
Robert Stigwood, and who discovered the Bee Gees, and Alan Carr, infamous flamboyant queen.
Are they still making movies? Like, are they dead? What?
They are dead. They are dead. But Robert Stigwood changed the way that we look at film. He produced Saturday Night Fever.
Oh my God, iconic.
And started the whole soundtrack
he loves
before
John
the movie.
Travolta.
Oh, yes. He
The dots are connecting.
Somehow he saw that talent when no one else did.
I love talent.
Talent. I'm such an aficionado. A connoisseur like you, I think.
Oh, yeah. Born to hand jive, baby.
And Grease 2 is very gay. I mean, that's just open.
I need to rewatch it. I haven't watched it since I was little.
Oh, it's a good time. Yeah, you'll enjoy that. So what kind of films were you attracted to at a younger age, especially during the period where you felt your light being dimmed? Because I'm familiar with that feeling, and I went into movies kind of.
Yeah, you know, I think Fame, the original Fame, really did something to me when I watched it for the first time. It was playing on like TBS or something and like cable at home, and it was on, and I just remember Coco like showing her titties, and I was like,
Treasure Lee Coco.
oh my God. And then at the time I was watching Degrassi, The Next Generation. It was a TV show, and there's a scene where like this girl, she like pulls her shirt up and she's like, I want to be famous, and she like shows her tits on camera, and it was like, I was like, oh my God. And then I saw Fame literally like the next day, and I was like, what is this titty like connection going on for me here? And like Fame, she wants to be famous, like I was just like, what is happening? So Fame really, I think, awakened me, because it was musical theater, it was dance, it was singing, it was acting, it was like, it was LaGuardia, you know, Fame school. So that really, I think, you know, and just the the grit that fame in that movie had, and like the
Yeah, it's not it's not the TV show.
no, and
which
it's not
was still kind of gritty, but
but not as much. Like that one like felt real almost. Like they just took a camera into the school in a way. They didn't, but
no, but still,
felt
yeah.
like
Well, I mean,
that.
the same director who did Mississippi Burning, so you know.
I love see, I love this. I love this.
You have to come over and do a movie club sometime.
No, I would love that. Please teach me everything. I want to know everything. I
You also
want
did a
to.
great musical called Bugsy Malone. More about that later. I will send it to you.
Please do. I want to like. It was my dream before I realized that I'm after Drag Race. There's not that much money coming in. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So like
yeah.
everyone thinks that you just become rich. Like times are changed. It's very oversaturated. But like,
Wait, it's oversaturated? Hold on a second. Are you sure? I'm going to do some research after the show.
baby, it won't take much long for you to find out that there's 5 million queens trying to make a name for themselves.
There's only, 125 seasons
Oh
on
my
currently,
God.
like at the moment?
It's amazing. It's amazing that there's so much love being pushed out in the world,
It
but
is.
it's hard because there's not a lot of money out there right now too.
Yeah.
So, but before Drag Race, my dream was to like I would want it. Maybe it can still happen, but I would love to create like a production company where we create like real cinema for drag queens. Like not like yes, camp is always going to be a part of drag because drag is camp,
Yeah.
but like to create real cinematic moments was the dream of mine. Like I started that on my YouTube channels, creating like parodies of movies that
Yeah.
I love. But like I'm in drag, but I'm like acting for real, and like that's what I really love to do at the end of the day. And like drag for me is acting. So I love cinema buffs and I love learning, and I'm not as in the know as I want to be. And like in another life, I would go to film school and learn. But
Sure. You know what? I know. Paul Thomas Anderson, the Magnolia director in Boogie Nights, there's this great clip of him on Charlie Rose saying, listen, don't go to film school. He said, and now I think he's restated that and even emphasized because of the availability of equipment.
the access. Oh yeah.
Right. And now, like, for instance, you do everything in your place, like I do, shooting with iPhones and some lighting. But he said that film school was a waste of time because you just go out and start making stuff, even if it's terrible, because then you get more and more experience. Quentin Tarantino made his first movie. He said it was fucking terrible. I spent all my money on it. But the key is getting past that failure, which is not like that's a hard thing for us to figure out. Failure is actually a learning experience. And sounds terrible. I know you've dealt with a lot of that. Or it would be worse if I said, I imagine you had a lot of that.
So you watched my season of Drag Race? No.
Well, but the hardships that you've endured and everything. And we'll get to that in just a second. It's funny. Usually on shows, people say that. Never get to it, but we will. The thing about the films, I just lost my train of thought.
Because I did cut you off.
Oh
My
no,
bad.
no!
And I
I
went on a
cut you
whole
off.
tangent.
We're fair now. We're square.
Okay.
At square. So, what was it? Oh, okay. An actor, actress, however one wants to consider themselves. Divine was the same way. Divine was never a person that considered themselves a drag queen. They always said, "Oh, this is a character I play. I'm an actor."
Yeah.
Which is
I relate to that so much, but it's hard for like the fandoms of like Drag Race to understand that.
Yeah.
It's weird because like I feel like the fans just want me to put on a wig and makeup and then just be me like this. You know what I mean? Like for me, drag is a persona, it's a character, it's acting at the end of the day, and I'm getting to use, all of who I am in my acting, in my drag.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, it's a weird idea because not a lot of drag queens approach it that way, but I relate to that 1000%.
It's also hard too when people talk about people being typecast in the old days. It's almost like that is the case now with the fandom, and that can be any fandom really, but particularly with Drag Race. What do you think might be maybe the engine for that?
Can you
Or like sort of so the typecasting? I'll just start. Typecasting has always been kind of a problem with every aspect of the acting world. For instance, don't let them know you're gay because you will never get a straight romantic lead, which I think is still kind of going on now.
Yeah.
But I think with drag queens, it's a new frontier. But about the fandom and their not regimented, but very sort of restricted idea of you and other queens, would you think that that's a fair assessment?
No, because again, I think drag is such a broad spectrum, right? Like there is no one way to be a drag queen,
Right.
right?
Right.
But I don't know. I think maybe these kids just haven't actually been to drag shows before or been out at in the queer community. I'm sure a lot of them might not even be queer, you know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I think it was really hard for me to learn that that's how they perceive drag. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That was a process.
Sure. And then actually you're in a better position when you understand, and there's no point thinking they should do fill in the blank. It's just like that's what they do.
Yeah.
So if that's what they do, what's the playing field and what's the game? And let's work that.
Yeah, I think that's where I come in, right? That's where like a lot of the great girls who are still kicking today come in. It's like they're carving and showing you what it can be, right? It's not just this one thing. It's not just a split and a dip in a bar, like, you know. So I think that's the cool part. And you know, I'm learning more now than ever that the race has really begun after the show, you know, and the hustle. And you know, I've always been working since I moved out here, you know, since before in high school and college. I'm a hustler. I like move, work. I go. And I think that mentality and grind has really shown up now after the show, because I think
well, just look at your YouTube channel.
well
You know what I mean? Right before we rolled, I almost did not hard ice. Isn't that what they say backstage? Yeah. Not hard ice. That's not quite it, but soft. Well, we'll get to that.
hard, soft, I don't know.
Yeah, slushy. I got slushy.
Okay.
But your YouTube channel is really impressive, because not only do you do Tit It or Quit It, you do
The titties are coming.
the titties are coming. And I love first of all, the approach, which is you just pick up your phone and tell people what's going on. And one of the things that really stood out to me was you agonizing over a Tit It or Quit It about the lighting bouncing off the green screen, bouncing off of you.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how much I resonated with the feeling you're sitting in front of your computer and you're like, I fucked the whole thing up.
The footage is not good.
But like it looked good. It like, you
It
know,
was fine at the end of the day.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got the job done.
You get complete distortion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, thank you for that. And it's like exactly what you're talking about. Like, just do it, just film it, just
Yeah.
create it and see what happens. And, you know, like, I don't have the backers of sponsorships yet, but like, I know from experience that these little seedlings will grow into something more, where eventually I'll have a booth or a, you know, production backing of some sort.
Yeah.
I just got to keep pushing the way I've always pushed and keep trying. But thank you for watching.
Oh my God,
The
it's
Titties
my
Are
pleasure.
Coming.
Yeah.
Going back to the fandom, it's like I wanted to create that series because I just wanted people to see what it takes for, you know, and it's like I'm well liked in the fan. I think for the most part I have a lot of supporters. I'm not as big as maybe some other girls, but I'm definitely not as not big as some other girls. So
You're
I feel
beloved in my
I feel like I'm
estimation,
okay.
yeah.
I'm in like a nice middle area. So I wanted to just take people on the journey, you know, being in the middle area, not being here technically, you know. I see the numbers. I'm not blind. You know what I mean? So, but being here allows for, you know, growth and a trajectory to be up here with those other girls, right? So I really just, you know, I always have this idea of that when I die, I just want, you know, how there's like always like footage, unseen footage people have of like celebrities after they passed away. Like, like I love that stuff. So if there's a way that I can capture my grind and hustle and what I do so when I die, someone can be like, look how hard she worked. I don't know. This is just kind of my way to like show, like, look, this is where I'm at right now, and this is what I'm doing to get here, and you guys are gonna go on the journey with me to see that, you know, and to just acknowledge the work that it takes to do what, you know, someone like me is doing. Because people just, you know, will scroll on social media and be like, oh, that's ugly, and then keep scrolling, or oh, I love her, and then keep scrolling. It's like, no, there's so much more than just that little image you're seeing for 15 seconds. So I kind of just wanted to bring people into the world of what it's like to, and I feel like creators will relate to the grind and hustle, and then maybe even inspire them to know that you're not alone. I see you. We're working hard over here too, baby. Let's keep on pushing together, you know?
Well, that's exactly how I felt. And also the dedication to just picking up the phone. Like, for instance, that segment was part of a full day where you got into drag. I can't remember for exactly what was it, to shoot something?
Yeah, I think I had a gig or something. I don't know.
Right. And then you were doing a podcast.
Podcast, that's right.
And then you had a thing at Precinct at like midnight.
Yes, I was in drag all day.
And then editing while in drag.
Yeah.
It was great. And then it did make me feel good because some days, today was an example. We started a little bit late, folks, but you don't need to know that. On that day, you did all that stuff. And you just kept pressing and pushing. And then you talked about the next day you had where you had to do a wig and you wanted to get your show up. But I love that you just said, okay, 3. I'm going to go to bed at 3. And when you cut to the next thing, you got the wig styled. You have it already. And you set yourself up for the next day. So and I find that inspiring. And also sometimes it's just difficult.
It's hard to wake up sometimes. You know what I mean? So like the fact that I get anything done is a blessing.
Yeah. And it's a good message, too, for younger kids who sometimes, as you said, have not experienced local drag. Their gateway is Drag Race, which, blessed be, it's a wonderful thing. But then I think the conception of what one has to do in order to even get on a stage anywhere is maybe a little warped.
Yeah, I don't think they realize how expensive it is, how much preparation, even packing to get to a bar for the night. It's, it's a lot. So I just feel like we need a little more transparency, as harsh and critical as people can be, like watching a show like Drag Race. It's like, let me show you the reality of what's happening, behind the scenes. I wish I would have documented packing for Drag Race.
Oh, that would have been great.
I literally 24 hours before I got picked up to go to the hotel.
Yeah.
I had not slept. I was crying. It was just a hot mess, but it would have been so juicy. Such good TV had that been documented. It was just insanity.
Being able to acquire that producer's mindset and not being perfectionist about stuff and going, hey, that's like kind of grisly. That's great. Like that'll work in the larger context, like the way you would look at someone else in a similar situation. Like, the producers on Drag Race, like, can you get there? She's crying in the corner. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think being on Drag Race and watching myself back and having complete, no control over what's being shown of me really just allowed me to be like, okay, like the worst of me has been out there and I've made the worst of myself out there on my own already. Like, I can, and like, going back, I don't think we talked about it here yet, but like my sobriety is a complete result of me being absolutely vulnerable and honest, sometimes a little too honest, which I don't care because at the end of the day, it's gotten me to this point. So I'm just going to continue to be honest and vulnerable. And like people who relate will relate. People who want to hate will hate. People who are digesting will digest it, and I hope it'll help someone along the way, but it's helping me just be myself,
It helps every aspect of your life, right? And you got sober at what age again?
20, a month after I turned 21.
That's amazing. Were you thinking about it when I'm turning 21? How do I tell people no?
I want to say it was so hard. It was like a mind game in my head, but like it had gotten that bad that I was like, let me just try this just for today and see what happens.
Oh, that's the smart way to get into it, which I don't think a lot of people think of. It's like, how do I do this without this or my life?
Oh my God. My first like Yelp was, I'm never going to be able to drink a Corona with my husband watching football. And I'm like, I don't even watch football. But that was what I was crying about, like, it's so silly.
Well, we get these notions in our head like, oh, I'm in Palm Springs. I should be drinking rosé.
Yeah, I should be hitting poppers at All Worlds, like that is exactly what my head was saying. But I can go to All Worlds without poppers.
So is poppers on the no-fly list? Because I'm always curious about where people's line is.
I know, it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
For me, I don't do anything that affects me from the neck up. So poppers affects me from the neck up, and that was so connected to my meth using with sex, and so it's kind of all connected for me. So I know if I allow myself to do poppers enough, maybe my brain will be like, maybe I can hit this, or maybe I can do, so it's just better for me to not do it. And one of my friends once told me, girl, if you need poppers to take that, maybe you shouldn't be taking that. You know what I mean? So
I remember telling someone, they were asking me about like, dude, what's this stuff, this numbing cream or something, and I said, listen, just breathe. Just breathe.
Literally.
Yeah, relax. And just
A lesson that I learned actually was like, it's in order to take something that you feel like you can't take, is you have to want it. If you want it mentally, like you will open for the gift. You know what I mean?
People think that people are talking about achieving in business. Yeah, kind of, but they're talking about that.
Yeah.
If you want it, you can get it.
Yeah, I think it's all about manifestation and
Yes.
Claiming to the universe what you want.
Sure, a little training and maybe some breathing.
Yeah. Breathing always helps.
When you started using meth, around what age would that have been?
It's so interesting because as I look back to when I first moved to Hollywood when I was 17, meth was around me everywhere. It was like, the people on the street outside my apartment that I lived in. And hookups that I would go to, they had bongs and chemistry labs that it looked like. And I'd always be like, what is this? Whatever. And then,
it's funny weed. I don't know what this weed is.
Yeah, it was just always around me in a weird way. It was kind of like this ghost that was haunting me until I finally like met someone who was doing it. And I was like, I know. And I told myself, it was weird. I was like, I know if I do that, it's going to be a whole new world I dive into. Yeah. So I kind of, I kept that guy that was doing it close, but I didn't do it because at the time I was like doing this show at the Celebration Theater. Do you know Celebration Theater?
No. Is this where is it?
That's the queer theater company here in West Hollywood.
Oh,
but
wow.
I don't know if it's still around or not, but at the time I was in a show there and I was like waiting for that show to be over. And as the day that the show was over, I went and did it for the first time at 19 years old.
Wow.
And then it was game over from then on.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it was a rapid descent, if you don't mind me saying so, to the rock bottom.
Mm-hmm. It was about a year, like a year and a half that I was using. It was just crazy. And I always say this too, like I didn't have the career, I didn't have the job, I didn't have the boyfriend, the husband, the home, the car. I didn't have these things to lose. So I basically just fell quickly. I'm sure like most people who have a family and a career and responsibilities, like I just graduated college and I literally had nothing. So it was easy for me to go down faster.
In a way, it's kind of a blessing. I don't know if you think of it that way.
1,000%.
Because if you did have like a very comfortable job in the car, there's a lot of people walking around functional. And maybe chip it every once in a while.
Or they use the, meth or the drugs as like, I deserve this because look how hard I'm working, right? Like that's also an idea too.
And also people who are doing well, it's like I always say, people who are drunks, if they're poor, they're disgusting drunks. If they're rich, they're so eccentric.
And it's so classy and dangerous. Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. And in the gay community I like that there is a D...
A D where?
A D. It's a show. Well, there's a D. Yeah, exactly. That's why I got distracted. I was like, where? It's less of what's the word? There's less of a stigma about drug use in general, but then there's also a huge problem. But I think that problem is just as bad in the straight community. I mean, we've all seen Breaking Bad, but. Do you think that the queer community is more open to helping others and also acknowledging those within the community or being in the community and having a problem?
I think because the queer community, we're so, we're activists at the end of the day. I feel like being queer is a form of activism in itself.
Yes.
And, we know how to speak up. We've been marching for rights forever and fighting for our brothers and sisters and trans, everything. Like, I think because of that, we are aware and awake to what's happening in our own community. Like we fought so hard to make the community what it is today.
Yeah.
We continue to fight to keep it alive, and drugs and meth specifically are killing a lot of our community. And because it's so intertwined with nightlife and sex, and it is glamorized and it is sexy and it is fun, but it is killing a lot of our peers. And I see it all the time, being sober here in LA. I have so many friends who have died of fentanyl overdoses and overdoses in general. It's just become they're putting crazy stuff in drugs today, and people are dying left and right. So I think we as a queer community are good at clocking that, and it's my responsibility to make sure I'm talking about it and being vocal about my sobriety, so people can see that there's support and hope and recovery if you are struggling with that, and people are struggling left and right. Just step outside and you'll see. You know what I mean? It's alive and
look, you go to any smoke shops near here, and you see, oh, that's an empty pen. What's that? Oh, what's that thing with a bulb? Oh, an oil burner. Sure, because everyone, this town.
Everyone's burning oil, honey. Yeah, no, it's literally a meth pipe. We call it the Pookie. There's like a smoke. My friends just told me too. They just opened up a smoke shop across the street from the beaches at the bar. And then my friends were like, "There's Pookies everywhere," and I'm like, "Oh no!" Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But people don't. It's not. We don't see it as a problem, but it is at the end of the day. Like, it's just so easy to get to.
Yeah, it's so easy, and there's so many pieces of paraphernalia that one day I was waiting in line at one of my favorite smoke shop, getting vapes, folks, because I like to stay healthy, and they had the one that I was like, oh, that's the thing in Boogie Nights.
Oh,
I mean?
yeah.
I was like, wow, it's not just, all right, okay, it's not just the Coke spoon over there or the Scarface double snorter, which is fun, charming. Yeah. When you were using, were you already having sex before that?
Oh my God. Yeah. I think that was the interesting thing, as I like do work on myself and sobriety and look back on like, where did it all begin? Like, when did it happen? Right. Like the dimming of my light, right? Like when did that start to happen? As I look back, like it was kind of sex that was the trigger for everything for me. And, drugs just enhanced my sex. And as I got sober, I learned that my sexual behavior was, also a major problem, and like as queer people, we aren't taught how to have sex. We aren't taught about sex or AIDS or HIV or STDs. So like it's I what I learned was like my sexual behavior growing up had to be sneaky. It was like in bathrooms, it was XYZ and like mysterious and not allowed, so it was dangerous. So that throwing drugs into that enhanced my sex, which then, just took over. So with drugs out of the picture, I had to look at my sexual behavior and like kind of work on that. And as queer people, I think, like I said, that's a big struggle for a lot of us that we don't want to talk about.
Yeah. And because the ingrained shame is still
the shame. Yeah, that part.
It's still there even in 2024, when a lot of us would like to think that there's none of that or much reduced, or some other people do. I don't.
Or we all want to say like, oh, we're so woke and so like accepting, but like there's so much, and at the end of the day, it's shame, right? That's keeping us from like living free at the end of the day.
It's funny what you said about that. I'm thinking about equality and in terms of the way that racism or classism presents in the queer community.
Yeah. I mean, I think I love that us as queer people are just so, again, like so awake to this stuff that we have those conversations. We get to talk about those things, and like it's a journey for all of us to kind of learn and how to navigate and be more accepting. And I think we're the leaders in acceptance at the end of the day. You know?
COVID treatment. Do you remember when that article came out in the midst of the initial hellhole of it all? It said queer people lead the pack. By some outrageous margin, because everyone was like,
"Oh yeah, because we know how to." That's right, because that's even like monkeypox. Like when monkeypox came out, there was lines around the block, and like we spread the news faster than ever on how to get the monkeypox vaccine. Like we as queer people, because of the AIDS epidemic, know how to show up for each other, know how to show up for our health, know how to take care of ourselves. The fact that the Gay and Lesbian Center here in Los Angeles like takes care of they're my provider. Like I've never been to a real there are real doctors that work there, but I haven't, I don't have my own doctor. Like I literally just go to the Gay and Lesbian Center for my health needs. And the fact that exists is just fantastic. And like, because of our history as queer people, that's why we have that today,
Yeah, I go to the queer clinic, and when I started going there, I was blown away. I hadn't had a physical in forever, and it was boom, boom, boom. You didn't have to explain the medication you're on or try to like, how am I going to get them to...
And the doctors understand like sex and the sex we're having, and it's like, it's just fantastic. So thank you to the healthcare workers at all the queer establishments that are providing our resources to our community.
Indeed, and I'd like to thank the clinic once again, but of course, you've been on the show via the phone call. Anyway, I got a hot test and they called me on and it was on the show. So,
oh, really? What'd you have?
Was it chlamydia or gonorrhea? It was my one dalliance, my dip in the pool of an STD.
It's so funny because like straight people are like, oh my God, I got gonorrhea, and they think they're going to die. Baby, like, I don't know, for gay men, for me, gonorrhea is like, oh, thank God it's just gonorrhea this time. You know what I mean?
I got a sun rash. It's like that.
When I got sober, like 2 months after I got sober, I went to go get tested, and I found that I had stage 4 syphilis.
Oh wow!
That
Stage
was like
4?
Yeah, that was like life threatening.
Wow.
And I had like abscesses on my body. I had like, it was just really bad.
Yeah.
And that was from my drug use and the behaviors I was doing while I
Sure.
was using. But I had no idea. And like, other than the abscesses, and then my skin started turning red is what I started seeing. And then I went to go get tested because of it. And they told me I had stage 4 syphilis, and I was life threatening.
Yeah. And like, you're just this close to also mental degradation.
Plus, I was doing meth, so how would I know? How would I know if it was syphilis or the meth? You know what I mean? So
it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell.
I was, and the Gay and Lesbian Center is what treated me and clocked it and took care of me. So I'm forever indebted to the Gay and Lesbian Center.
John Grant had a similar thing. It was syphilis too. So I guess that's more prevalent than. I mean, there's 2 people I know who had it.
I just saw an AHF billboard that says eye syphilis is a thing. And like, it has a picture of like these eyes that are all crusty. I don't know. Eye syphilis. And there's like a bug right now going around for like eating butt. Like if you eat ass, people are getting sick from eating ass. Oh no. It's like a thing going around right now.
We just got the stigma kind of removed. And
I know, we're the worst. But like, listen, straight people are eating ass everywhere nowadays. So
They are.
Listen, we got to find the cures and the sicknesses. Why are we always because we're doing it first. You know what I mean?
Pioneers always get the arrows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so you're welcome, straight people.
Welcome to waking you up. Now, pegging's a thing. It's great.
I love pegging.
Yes.
Oh, it's my favorite kind of porn to watch.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. The only problem I have with it is that there's too much degradation wrapped into it. Like, I like the ones where it's like saucy and the woman's a little bossy or whatever, or when it's just very sweet, when it's like an actual couple. Sadly, some of them have their faces cut off, and you're like, come on. Come on, just go for it.
Yeah, I always feel that way with like some kind of like the kind of porn that has like super aggressive stuff that sometimes feels a little like, I don't think they're acting right now. Like that always kind of scares me.
Like the S&M where it gets, you're like, oh, this is really sadistic.
That scares me.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I just hope that they're acting or like they're actually enjoying it and it's not like a thing.
I wonder about that too sometimes when you see stuff. I'm like, wait. And then I think, okay, right, Craig, you forget that some people are into like very extreme pain or pain pigs or whatever.
Which if that's for them, like that's great. But I know just from experience that like I've allowed myself to be in situations that I'm like, I'm not okay with this, but I continue to let it happen, because XYZ, whatever situation is.
Would that be with the same person or?
Sometimes strangers. Like, oh my God, I'll never forget my first time at the Cock in New York City. Have you ever been?
Yes, I have. And my story's from, I'm guessing, a little bit milder, but my favorite moment is that the guy in front of us, the woman said, listen, put your wallet in the front pocket,
pickpocketing,
or you'll get pickpocketed. And he knew everything, right?
I love that.
And then he's like, wait, where's my wallet? And she goes, I just pickpocketed you.
Oh, she did it.
I just fucking told you. Now put it in your front pocket.
Yes. See, it's always the women, mostly lesbians, that be looking out for us. You know what I mean? To be quite honest.
Exactly.
Shout out to the lesbians.
If I hear instruction from them, I'm just like, anything
yes,
you
ma'am.
say, whatever.
Yes,
even if
sir.
I don't understand. Yes.
No, 1,000%. But like, so I was 21. I was newly sober. I had like 6 months sober.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My first time in New York City, I went to the Cock, and like I was, I didn't. It was so dark in the dark sections that was going on.
It's real dark.
I didn't go in there. This is the old, I think the old Cock before. I think they switched locations. I'm not sure.
I know they did.
They did, right? Yeah. So it was the first location that I had gone to, and I met this guy, and he took me. We went to the bathroom together, and I was doing something, and then he like wound his hand up, and then slapped me across the face, and I was just like. I like pushed him back and I cried and I was like, no. And I ran out and I like called my sponsor and I was like, I just got slapped across the face.
Yeah.
And like, that's something that I just don't, for me, is not okay. Like, I don't like being slapped.
Also, like severe slap, like a little tap.
Yeah, that there's something different. But he wound that up. Like, I like hurt him. I don't know. And he hurt me. It was, I don't know. Slapping for me is just, that's where I draw the line. And
yeah.
So
there's also this kind of entitlement for people to do really extreme things in a stranger to stranger situation where there is that sadism in there. There's something dark in them there hills because, it's pretty good that you meet a stranger and you're going to have sex or whatever you're doing.
Fun.
Isn't that fun? Like maybe check with them or like maybe the second interaction.
Yeah, maybe the second time you hang out, you can slap them and bruise them up. Yeah.
Hey, do you like slapping? Not that hard. One guy, it was a hookup who then just decided he was going to spit in my mouth. And I was like, whoa, hey, no way.
Oh, I like that.
Well, see, if you like it. Also, I bet someone asked you before it happened. Or maybe not. Okay,
I
maybe
think
I'm
sometimes
assuming.
you feel it in the moment, right?
Well, yeah, that's
Yeah.
reading the room.
Yeah,
I
reading the
mean, you
room.
know, as an entertainer, you know. Yeah.
1,000%. Crowd work.
Well, yeah, and there's also something to be said for making a not aggressive move, but making a move and not always saying, "Hey, is it all right if?"
I mean, consent at the end of the day,
Well,
right?
consent,
Yeah.
but then there's like there's sort of a pool of consent rather that once you're inside that pool, there's certain things that are, let's say, not that different from what you're doing, like a hand on something or whatever that isn't a slap. I don't know if that's cancelable. What I just said. I don't know if that's like
No, I mean, I think it's just about communication.
if they're
at the end
asking
of the
for
day.
it.
No, I think what it comes down to is like knowing what you're okay with and what you want and what makes you feel good, right?
Yeah.
And like if you know that, then you're able to express that and communicate that.
Yeah.
And if that's, I feel like when we get into trouble sometimes, like I don't know if I like XYZ and I just let something happen, and it's not till later that I realize, oh shoot, I didn't like that. You know?
Yeah. Do you have like kind of a freeze fawn trauma reaction?
What is that?
So there's a number of different. There's like 4 main ones. There's the fight or flight. There is the 2 I can't remember, and then freeze fawn, which is that's my trauma response. So if someone gets super aggressive with me, not all the time, but if it's something like sometimes in dating in older years, you kind of go oh, and then the fawn is. They should apologize to you or they should, but you then start trying to make things better for them.
What's a fawn?
That's the fawning. It's like fawning is like, oh, are you okay? Like when someone you're not mad, are you? When you really
I think
you're
that's
mad.
me. Oh, that's me. I do that. I'm a fawner. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really helpful when you learn the terms of this.
Yeah. I call it like people pleasing almost,
yes,
right?
Yeah, exactly. They're part and parcel. Like they are in that same picnic basket of I got to get rid of this fucking picnic basket. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm very much that. I'm like Monet Exchange recently said like sit and suffer in silence. Like that's very much me. Like I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, I grew up like being told like don't hit women, like you're not allowed to touch girls, which yes, you know, like why would I ever?
Yeah.
But like my mom like instilled that in my head, like I don't fight girls, I don't put my hands on them. And one time when I was younger, I was getting bullied by this like butch, I don't know what, but she was like spitting in my face, she was throwing me to the ground, and the whole time I was just like, I'm not allowed to touch her, but I'm allowed to let her hit me. So that really like messed me up in the head, you know? And so I feel like that created some trauma for me where I'm like, I freeze because I'm not allowed to do, but I'm like, well, how do I make you right in this situation so I can just get away? You know, I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, then it compounds it because you feel guilty and shameful about the fawning part, which is almost worse than the initial incident. It's a wild one. It's a wild
crazy?
One. It
We're
is.
so weird.
Oh, yeah. So we were talking about framing and framing people. Now,
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? That's literally one of my favorite movies ever.
it's such a brilliant movie.
My tattoos that I'm getting on my arm, my sleeve that I'm getting done from my
oh, wow.
tattoo artist Paint Rag from Long Beach. That's paint_rag. Shout out to you. Has been doing my sleeve, and it's inspired not only by my drag, but from a scene in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. At the very end, when they're driving off Toonland or Toonville is like waving goodbye, and it's like every single cartoon character from like Bugs Bunny and Betty Boop and Donald Duck and like so my sleeve is actually inspired by that because it's like all different favorite cartoon characters as drag queen cholas with their titties exposed.
So for those who don't know what a chola is, would you mind explaining?
A chola is just, it's usually a Mexican-American Latin woman, but I think residing in Los Angeles specifically. And it's just like, you know, the girl from the block. And like, that's the girls I grew up with. It's my cousins, my tias. And I think it's more of like a mindset and like an energy, you know? And that's kind of what I exude in my drag persona. Because, you know, I think cholas get like a bad rep and like, oh, they're ghetto, they're stupid, whatever the case is, like the bad negative connotations that come with that idea. I'm here to kind of stomp on them and like prove you wrong, you know? So like, it's interesting because, you know, like on Drag Race, I chose to make that my entrance look. And that was like a conscious decision. And I knew by doing that, it was going to incite a stereotype to me that people are going to have and people are going to connect with who I am. And I think in a way I kind of what is the word?
Reclaimed?
Why, yes, but I think I designed it to be that way so that people would have that idea of me.
Yes. Yeah.
So I can then prove them wrong, you know, and then
use their biases against them.
And yes, and then reclaim it and show y'all, yes, I'm this and I'm what you think I am, but look how much more I am, because Latin women are so much more than just that idea or our hot Cheeto girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. There are those couple stereotypes that the world loves to show in films.
No, yeah,
and everything. Yeah,
and you know, they have their place and they're stereotyped for a reason. But
it's only a couple colors in the spectrum.
Correct, and I'm here to show that like we're so much more than just what you think. You know,
and sorry, I should rephrase. And those colors in the spectrum are not these like two-dimensional people who don't have brains or don't have thoughts or
which
emotion.
Is why I was like, I had to kind of, because a lot of feedback that I was getting from the show, I was so offended by. I was like, oh my God. But I was like, oh, no, wait, I designed it this way. And of course they're going to behave this way because this is how they feel about girls like that. Right. Yeah. So I had to step back and be like, wait, this is exactly what I signed up for. This is what I should have known this was coming,
Sure.
And like, which is why like the titties are coming, like, my YouTube series, like, it's all to show you like, baby, I'm 3 steps ahead of you actually, So
yeah, and another thing I loved is that you show like the drag room, and it's not in pristine presentational
oh my God,
condition.
That's my living room. It's not even my drag room. That's just my apartment. It's just
But where are we right now? In my living room.
Yeah, literally. Yep.
And there's just lights everywhere, and it's
cords.
Lots of cables for miles, for days, honey. Who were some of the women in your life when you were growing up that maybe you modeled some of your character on?
Definitely the girls in high school, my tias, my mom's sisters and cousins. Like every weekend, if you're Latino, you have like a party, a birthday, a graduation. There's always some sort of event, fiesta happening, right? In someone's backyard, in someone's house. So and I just remember like my mom and my tias would just cackle like witches. Like and I'd always be so embarrassed, and I'd be like, oh my God. And they were so loud, and they're yelling and they're drinking and they're, and I used to be so ashamed of that. And I used to be like, this is not what I see on TV. Like families don't act like this. Like I used to be so ashamed of it. Yeah. So, my drag and like my journey into accepting my Latinness and like where I come from, it all goes into my drag. So that's really where I feel like, the idea of who Salina EsTitties is comes from.
Yeah, and your family seems to be pretty accepting of homosexuality and everything, your uncles and everything. Do you know if your uncles had problems when they were coming up?
So interesting, because my uncle, my tío Roberto, he grew up in Honduras, and he was always been very like, yeah, I'm gay, so what? Fuck you. He would like get into fights with people. He would tell me stories about how he literally would fight his own dad because he called him, the F slur in Spanish. And my uncle was very strong-willed and very, very just stood up for himself. Very, very himself. And I think my mom modeled that too. Like they're just very, very confident with who they are. And my uncle led that. My uncle was the first one to come to America, and my mom followed suit after that. And so, and just I remember asking my mom before she passed away the story of how she came to America. I never asked her prior to that my entire life, and just to learn like the perseverance it takes and the strength to get over here.
Oh, sure.
The way they did.
How did they get over here?
So the way my mom described it is kind of like there's these groups and packs, and like there's these like leaders basically who will gather you up, and you guys all kind of take I think for her it was 13 days of traveling, like car, by foot, through the river, all this different stuff to get to America. And, it was legally, but
legally, and then still it's that whole process, which is wild.
Illegally.
Oh, I thought you said legally, and I was illegally. Like, what? Oh my God.
No, I'm pretty sure it's illegally, but she ended up getting her citizenship. She married my dad. Like she did everything she needed to do to be good. But, that's the truth and a reality for a lot of Latinos and Latin families to get here. And without my mom doing that, I wouldn't be here. So like, that she went with a group of 13 people to get to America, and by the end of like the journey, she was the only one with her, I think, I forgot what they call it, coyote, like the person who takes you on the
Sure.
journey. Basically, it was
Is that, sorry to interrupt, is that one of the folks that is like, that's their gig, and they do that like on a every week they take another?
Yeah, I think they get paid to like bring people over, and like sometimes people don't survive. People die on the way. People get caught on the way.
Yeah.
People get arrested on the way. My mom was the only one to survive out of 13 people. In 1985 or 84, something like that.
Wow.
So, and she was 1988, and she was 18. She was 18 at the time.
That's amazing. And every time you hear people, Republicans, that's pretty much who, squawking about immigrants, there's a couple things I think about. It enrages me in general. But then, listen, if someone went through all that effort and difficulty and trauma to get to a land, hey, that's what we're all about, or supposedly are
land
about
of
here.
the free, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the ways or the legalities of anything to actually, I don't know. This is just what had happened over 35 years ago. You know what I mean? But it still happens today. But people just want a better life for them and their families at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe if there's a way to make that a better, I don't know the answer to anything.
Oh no,
to any of this,
I don't know the answer either. It's just, I think that there should be way more compassion about people who go through so much and then really are determined to get here, and therefore determined to make a better life, which makes this a better country. So
yeah. I don't know.
Well, back to the gay stuff.
I got real I was like, I've never had this conversation before, so I don't even really know how to talk about it. That was the first time I ever shared that.
Oh well, that's really that. Well, thank you.
I tried to share it on Drag Race, but I did a runway dedicated to my mom from that story. But I didn't really know how to have that conversation. I just knew how to present it through my drag, through my art.
Well, it's tough, right? Because you got to not say things in a bite-sized way, but how do you condense that story?
Yeah, and I think it was even hard for, production to digest that story. And they didn't want to ruffle feathers too, so it was hard for them to even allow me to do that runway. It was a really hard process to get that on the runway, but it happened, and I'm very grateful for it because it did touch a lot of people.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it was, dedicated to my mom, who passed away during my season, while my season was airing. So it was just very beautiful to watch that. As soon as my mom passed away, I was like, oh, this gets to live on in her honor. And because of that moment, look where I'm literally living an American dream because of my mom's sacrifices, So it was really cool, full circle.
And that was her dream, right? Especially when you were born.
And she had no idea her son was going to be a drag queen on RuPaul's Drag Race on MTV. You know what I mean? We would watch MTV when I was little, together. We had no idea that would happen.
Now, though they were au fait with homosexuality, was drag ever an issue for your family?
No, I don't think, it's so interesting when I grew up in Castro. I remember when I was 6 years old, I got pushed into the bedroom and they closed the door on me on Halloween because my uncle's dressed up in drag for Halloween, and my parents and them didn't want me to see, or they were trying to keep it a secret. I don't know. They were trying to protect me, whatever the case is. But I remember sneaking through the door right before they closed it on me, and my uncle was in these thigh-high blue go-go boots with a big afro at the time, and it's not good today, but that they were doing a disco drag look.
Sure.
And
they had big curly hair.
Yeah, big curly hair, and I was just like, so they were accepting of my uncle, and like I said, my uncle's very strong-willed, and fuck you, if you don't accept me, I'm gonna be who I am. So that was a life since I was little. So I think when I started doing drag, they didn't even really question it. They're just oh, he's acting, he's performing, and I got to invite them to my shows so they can see what I'm doing, and they would see the way that the crowd would react to me, and they're just like, that's my son. They'd be so proud.
And then they got to see you in A Star Is Born.
Oh my God. Did anyone really see me in A Star Is Born?
Well, if you're a parent, if you're a relative, you're going to be, I saw you.
I could barely see me when I was in A Star Is Born. Oh my God.
How was that experience for you?
Oh my God. So if you don't know, I was played a drag extra in the Lady Gaga scene where she was with Willem and Shangela. And in The Star Is Born, and I was in one of the queens just in the background. And actually, that experience was so cool because it was before I was on Drag Race. I was been doing drag for like 5 years at the time, and again, I'm an actor, so I'd always submit myself for acting and film and TV stuff and commercials. And I got an agent before Drag Race for TV and film for drag, and I booked every single audition they sent me except for one. And that was American Horror Story when Eureka and Vanjie were on American Horror Story.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was the only one I didn't get. And I was like, oh, well, it's because they're on Drag Race and I'm not. And so I've been working these like Hollywood streets for a while. And a lot of the times they were like, you know, a drag queen extra, but this was one of those moments. And I remember being backstage and Lady Gaga came out and she came up to each drag queen and she had like this very beautiful like moment with each of us. Like she pulled me out from my chair and she's like, hi, I'm Lady Gaga. And I was like, hi, I'm Salina EsTitties. And she looked me in the eyes and she's like, thank you for being here. And she gave me like the most beautiful like hug that lasted for like longer than 30 seconds.
I know what you mean, like that real serious hug where you're almost like, am I go there too long?
It was
and
like,
this is
and like she had like this glow about her too in that moment. She was in like in a bathrobe and she, you know, she had her eyebrows blocked out because that's the scene with Bradley Cooper where she's like taking off her eyebrows or something in the dressing room. That was the scene. And I actually, she just gave me that hug, and then she went around to each drag queen, and there was like 5 of us there at that time. And then we got to watch the scene between her and Bradley Cooper in the mirror having that moment.
Yeah.
I was like literally backstage watching it happen, and Bradley Cooper was directing. So like to watch him direct, then go do the scene, communicate with Gaga, give her notes. They did it twice, and that was it. And that was a very like intimate, like powerful scene to me in the movie.
Yeah.
And getting to watch it, you know, in real time was like, I'm a Hollywood girl. You know what I mean? It felt so cool.
Yeah.
And then I got to be there, you know, and I knew Shangela and Willem at the time already. So like it was familiar. Lady Gaga hugged me. Like it was just so cool. And in the movie, you see like you have to pause it and like look behind 3 people to see me. But I was there, and like the experience I had on set that day was more than getting a moment on screen, you know? Like
those things are so valuable. Then you're like, it's almost like something you're like, someone's like, did you get paid for it? Not that particularly, but something else. You're like, no, you don't get it. Like there's this thing. It's very important.
It's more than about money in that moment. It's the experience and like getting to have that like insight, right? Like
and also seeing them do a scene, a very important scene, but only twice.
Isn't that crazy?
And you see, because you always think,
and they
do
improv'd a lot of it. I think there was like a few lines that they actually had, and a lot of that was just they were like going off the cuff.
And Cooper kept the accent going the whole time, right?
Oh, I didn't even clock that.
Oh, I read that somewhere, and I was like, that's so great. Like someone being directed by the guy who sounds like Sam Elliott's brother. But about your other roles, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. What role were you in that? I haven't seen the show in ages.
Oh, again, it was like a lot of drag queen extras. What I did like back in the day, and that was like a drag brunch that was happening, and I was just one of the queens performing. But I was there, and again, like these extra roles that I would do, like dress up in full drag, getting paid, you know, $100 or $50 to do. But it's the experience of getting to be on set with these people, right? And like with Danny DeVito, seeing him there, like that's, you know, it's the life, the actor's life.
And it's also, nothing is more instructive than actually being there. It's like we were talking about before with film school, great if you can, but that is like what I don't know how many years worth of training.
I've been in Hollywood since I was 17. I've been doing this since I was 17 years old. I'm 33 now. And like that was the interesting thing about going to Drag Race, right? Is like I'm on set. I'm no stranger to being on set. I'm no stranger to being in a sound stage, to being in the studio in front of the camera. And I've been doing it for so long that I actually knew a lot of cameramen there. I knew a lot I knew a lot of challenge producers that were on set. I knew people who would come to set for the day to work on something. Like I'd be like, "Oh my god, hey Nikki! Oh my god, hey Boo!" Like they'd be like, "Oh my god, I can't!" And like I feel like production would be like, "Who the fuck is this bitch? Why does she know everybody?" The other drag queens on my seasons are like, would look at me and be like, "Why do you know them?" And I'm like, "I've been working in Hollywood for the past 17 years, you guys. Like." This is not new to me, you know? So it was insane to feel the energy to be treated like, shut up and sit down. I'm like, this is where I live. Like this is not new to me, you know? But they're used to girls who, for their first time being in that scenario, you know?
Right. And also being thrown a little, because I think, this is just my conjecture, that's part of the whole game. Are you thrown that much that this is going to get in your way?
I think that's what I struggled with. Is like I'm so used to being on set and filming projects that when I was there, I had to learn like, oh, this is a different game that's happening.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me to digest. And that's why I was going through it so much. Because I'm like, wait, this is not how TV works. But I'm like, oh no, that's exactly how TV works.
Yeah.
Reality TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they could go back to the thing, not for you, but, like flooding the cast with booze for the Untucked. But
oh, I feel like we could have had way more, to be honest.
Well, I know didn't they put a clamp on it after season 5 or something like that?
Yeah, I think when Shangela threw the drink in her. I will never have the sugar daddy monologue.
Oh God, yeah, the glory days of Untucked. Though it's still wonderful, of course. I wonder how maybe intimidated some of the other girls were about the fact that you were so conversant.
I think that was a thing.
Yeah.
I feel like they clocked onto the fact that you know what I mean? But
you're like, hey, Larry, to the camera guy. No,
but I think, through learning what my role was on the show, which is kind of what I feel like if you're going to Drag Race, I think the whole point is to learn what game piece you are in the chessboard. And I think a lot of the girls started to realize they were like heavy hitters than where I was placed. So they were like, oh, I don't have to worry about her because I'm here.
That's
Does
a
that make
classic.
sense?
That's a classic mistake, though, right? I don't have to worry about. I feel like just as a viewer, knowing folks, you should always be worried. Always, not to the point of anxious breakdown, but be like, I can't take that for granted, and I shouldn't just assume.
Mm-hmm. I guess so, but I don't know.
Well,
it's a reality TV, and then Drag Race is its own little monster.
Yes, it is. It's very separate from all the other things.
I don't think there's any other reality TV show that's ran the way Drag Race is, or calls for so much from their contestants.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, and there's it's not just a game show. There's a game show element, but there's also the real exposure of one's heart.
Have you seen I forgot what it's called. Is it called Real? It's like, it was the TV show scripted that was based off of like The Bachelor.
Oh no, I heard about this.
Oh, it is so good. It is so good. It was from like years. It was years and years ago, but it was like basically The Bachelor, a Bachelor-like reality show, and it's like what the producers are doing to the contestants to get what they need from them.
Oh, I love that.
And it's so shady and sneaky and disgusting and sickening. It's so fierce. I forgot. I feel like it's called Real, but I don't remember.
I'll look that up though, because I love that stuff.
Yeah,
like I'm friends with the Vanderpump Rules gang, and so I see, I've been at events and stuff, and like watching, the camera's running over there, and that kind of thing.
It's so good. It's so good, and the actress who plays the lead is just like fantastic. She's so sickening.
Because I think all reality TV is an amazing sociological experience, and also who generally gets the opportunity to see that much of themselves on camera and how they react and how they even stand or walk.
Because of the strikes that were happening, I feel like reality TV had such a boom. I mean, it's had a boom, since Simple Life. And but like, I feel like people today strive to be reality TV stars. And like, I even see there's a lot of like shows now that are just recycling their past contestants, and people are making full careers out of just being on reality TV. And it's so interesting to me because it's like, as real as it is, it's not, and it's like people are playing these roles of reality TV stars, which are like, they're like not real, but they are real. It's so
no, I know
it's
what
weird.
You mean.
You know what I mean?
It's this
like,
weird dual.
They're acting, but they're not acting. But they're very conscious that it's a whole. It's not like it's not acting, but it is.
It's almost like on Curb Your Enthusiasm when Richard Lewis would play Richard Lewis. He's like a heightened version. Yes, he would be like this, but probably not day to day.
Yeah, it's definitely its own like category of acting almost, and like not one that I learned in theater school, you know what I mean, or an acting school, but I feel like, are they teaching kids how to do reality TV acting
That'd be
nowadays?
interesting to find out, because it used to be right that people would go, well, I don't know if I want to do a reality.
Yeah, it was like a stigma to do reality TV.
Yes.
You didn't want to do that because then you're not taken seriously. But with the day, like this age of social media, it's like, oh no, you got to be a reality TV star. That's how you get anywhere in life.
And like Ariana had that big scandal happen, being cheated on Vanderpump Rules. Now she's on Broadway in Chicago.
Ariana who?
Oh, sorry, Ariana Madix. I forget that when I say Ariana,
I think Ariana Grande. And I was like,
I make that mistake all the time because I'm like obsessed with Vanderpump and I know them. I'm like, oh yeah, Ariana's doing this, Ariana's doing that. Like, my mom knows who I'm talking about. She's not as with it with the latest music, but so now it's totally a gateway to everything else, which is amazing.
Right? I mean, like Drag Race, right? Like
yes.
the platform for me to get everything that I want to do afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. And that's yeah, that's a whole stripe of talent that they're looking for. Now, when you were in theater school, what were some of the first things that you really felt like, oh, this is my kind of thing?
Um, Definitely acting class, right? Like I remember before, I got into acting because of theater in high school, and then I would do these competitions at the local college in Stockton, Delta Community College.
Uh-huh.
And I remember doing like this monologue for this acting competition, and I won. And from there, and then any acting class I had in high school, I went to AMDA, the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, for their inaugural BFA program in Los Angeles. It wasn't available in New York yet, so that's why I stayed in LA.
Oh, okay.
I would have gone to New York if they had it, but LA had the BFA program. And like in my mind, I was like, oh, I have to get a BFA, I have to get a degree, and that's what I'm being told to do. So I went there. And what stood out to me was my acting classes with Bill Mesnick. He was my acting teacher at the time, and my voice lessons with Chris Feldman, and then my dance training, because I never danced before that. I watched So You Think You Can Dance, like the TV show.
Yeah, yeah.
The first 4 seasons, I was like, and again, like watching Fame, like the dancers in Fame, then watching So You Think You Can Dance, and like I remember watching Dreamgirls and like Step Into the Bad Side scene when they're the big dance sequence. Like I was just like, I loved dance, but I never was put into dance. I never had any dance training, but I did karate for 13 years growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
And that discipline you learn is like choreography in a way.
Totally, yeah.
So when
the mastery of your limbs and all of that.
yeah,
right?
I was doing splits on bricks, like holding a staff since I was 3 years old. Like I was already very flexible. So when I went to college and I took my first dance class, I was like, why wasn't I doing this my entire life? I was such a late bloomer, because for male dancers, like starting at 17 is good luck.
What's the average starting age? Like 11, 12?
Oh, I think male dancers start dancing at like 3.
What?
Yeah,
Oh
3 or
God.
4 or 5. Like they get put in little ballet classes, and they have their little costumes and dance competitions.
So it's like ice skating.
Yeah, 1000%. I did not have that experience. So, I was a late bloomer. So when I discovered it at 17 in college, I was like, I have to work 10 times harder to catch up and learn what a passe is, what a tendu is, and to get some form and technique going. And, after I graduated college, actually, I auditioned. That's when I started doing meth, and I was auditioning for dance roles and stuff, but not booking it because I was a crackhead. And I auditioned for, at the time in LA, there's this place called Edge Performing Arts Center. It was like the big dance studio in Los Angeles, like the commercial dance studio that all the kids go to after they graduate high school. There's a program called Scholarship, which is a scholarship program. They take like about 20 dancers, they train them for an entire year and prepare them to have a commercial dance career in Hollywood. And I auditioned after college because I got a couple dance training, a little classes, but it was more musical theater based. So my singing and acting was the main priority. Yeah. So when I graduated, I was like, I want to be better at dance. Cracked out, at the bathhouse. That was my dream.
Yeah, I'm dancing as fast as I can. I think
that yes. Using my flexibility skills. I auditioned for the scholarship program at Edge, and I didn't get it when I was using. And when I got sober at 21, I auditioned when I had like 6 months sobriety, and I ended up getting it at 21 years old, which also is very late for scholarship. Like usually you're 17, 18, straight out of high school doing scholarship program. And I got it at 21, 6 months sober. So the beginning of my sobriety was like spent going to training to dance every morning, working my little night job at Kitchen 24 at the time in West Hollywood, and going to a meeting in between. So that was like my life. My first year of sobriety was training and dance.
Wow. Yeah, your schedule was full. And was that helpful in that early stage of sobriety?
Yeah, because it gave me structure, right? Like I got to wake up, go dance, go to a meeting, go to work, do it all over again for an entire year. It was like probably as great as like being in college again.
Did that start, or rather, how many months after like you get sober, everything's out of your system? I'm curious how long it was until that all started, and also what was that time in between like?
That time in between, I think, was just learning like how to live sober, and like the program. I got sober through AA, and so just learning, the 12-step program and doing what I needed to do. And it was like a long journey that didn't end at that point. Like it was 6 months between I got sober and then auditioned and got in. So that time between, I think, was just kind of learning, like, what are the ropes here? Like, what am I doing here? And I remember a friend of mine when I first got sober told me that, it's like, just try it for 30 days. If your life's not different after 30 days, or I think he even said, like, try it for 6 months. If it's not, if
Okay.
your life's not better after 6 months, go drink and use again. And then 6 months, I got that scholarship, and I was like, my life's pretty good. And like, this is a result of me being sober. So like, I stayed sober.
So were there moments in that first 6 months where you were doubting it, where you felt like, God, I could just do that again and it's not that big of a deal? And I'm asking mainly because I think a lot of people
struggle with that, like relapse,
yes,
right?
Yeah. Particularly if there are moments like, for instance, with you and what you said, I tried out for this, it didn't work. All things that are, again, shame-based or guilt, like I blew it, I didn't do that. And I think it's important to talk about because we can all feel like I blew it, I didn't. But that's not really true. You can always get back to it.
I think kind of what I learned, and like being sober, what I learned is like trusting on something bigger than myself, right? Like that the universe has a plan for me.
Yeah.
And I actually had this realization like at 5 years sobriety. I remember I like quit drag because I was like, it was too expensive. I couldn't keep up. It was hard. I wasn't making any money. I couldn't afford it. I was gaining weight because I was working at In-N-Out Burger at the time. It was just like a very like low place in my life in recovery, 5 years sober, right? 25, 26 years old. And I was on a Greyhound bus coming back to Hollywood from visiting my parents in Stockton. And I was listening to Oprah and RuPaul. And RuPaul said something that snapped in me and made me realize like, oh, there's a reason I got sober at 21. Like there's a reason that happened, that I stayed sober for that long. And again, I think back to that all the time because I'm like, there's a reason that I stuck with it. Like there's a reason I didn't relapse there, and I think what that reason was I was burnt down so much by the time I was I got sober. Like I was at such a low point in my life that I don't ever want to go back to that. And then all the gifts that have come since being sober, I don't want to lose that.
Right. And it's the hardest point, right? When you're at In-N-Out. And also, as a dancer, as a performer, and as someone who I'm guessing on meth was like stick thin, the weight issue. I mean, I've had weight issues in my life, and I've definitely had unhealthy thoughts because of that. It must have been very difficult to bear. Yeah.
1000%. But things were happening in my life at such a young age, like getting on scholarship, and then, and I was learning so much about myself, being, again, surrounded by all these older gay men who took me under their wing and were teaching me about life, like how to live life as an adult, like as an adult gay man. Like they were teaching me how to do that. So I think I was just like very hungry to learn, and I finally had a community who was like supporting me and understood what I was going through, and that really helped me stay.
So it was 17, you moved to Hollywood. So between 17 and 19, which is when you started using, what was that era like?
That was college at AMDA.
Oh, I see.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I was
and you graduated early too, right?
I graduated in 2 years.
That's pretty impressive.
I went through, it was a 4-year program, but I graduated in 2 because I just stayed and I didn't want to go back home and I wanted to get it done. And I love training. I love learning. I love teachers. My teachers there were probably like the best part of that school. My credit's fucked because of loans and debt from that, but my training,
American way.
My training was so valuable. And another cool thing too is my voice teacher, Chris Feldman. I remember when I was she was my voice teacher my entire time in college. And I remember she kind of saw my trajectory of my using.
Yeah.
And by the end, by the time I graduated in like a haze and a fog because I was like doing coke every night. Our college was right across the street from Tiger Heat at the time, and I was 18, and it's 18 and up club, so I would go there, get wasted, show up to my voice lesson hungover, drunk, high, all these things. And she clocked. She was like, I remember one time she like hit the piano and she said, "Jason, I'm an alcoholic. And the minute I take that first drink, I don't know what's going to happen to me." And all I could think was like, why is this lady telling me she's an alcoholic? What a weirdo. And then when I remember I had 30 days, I called her and I was like, "Hey, Chris, like I remember you told me this when I was using like back in our day. And I just want to tell you I have 30 days today." And she was like, "I am more proud of you now than I've ever been our entire time in college or in our training." She's like, "Go, keep going." And I talk to her to this day, and I have 12 years now, and she's been sober for way longer than that. And again, the universe has had this plan for me, right? It's placing these people in my life, like like even though there was meth around me, there was this like beacon of like hope and someone who's going to be there for me at the end of the day, you know? So I don't know. It's just, I look back at that stuff and I'm like, everything makes sense. Everything has its purpose. Everything's happening for a reason. And I just I love Chris so much.
And that's such an important mindset or a truth to keep in mind, which can be really tough when we're in those really low moments. But I can't remember who said this, but it's so true. Everything seems like it's all crazy, helter-skelter, ass over tea kettle, especially at certain points. And then when you look back, it looks very linear. It looks like a well-written book.
Yeah. And like even not getting scholarship the first time when I was using it and then getting it afterwards, like what are the chances, you know? So
well, and also like how would it have gone if you had gotten that then? Maybe
oh my God, yeah, totally. And like I look back at auditions I'd show up high to and like thank God I didn't book those, you know, that Mamma Mia tour.
That would have been a rough tour.
Yeah.
That would have been a rough tour. And then also you would think, oh my God, my reputation and all that stuff. And did you at the time think, they don't know? Like,
oh yeah. Well, I thought I was hiding it from everyone.
Yeah.
And I hid it from my parents. They had no idea. Like, yeah, totally.
Parents also have that thing where they're kind of like, they want to overlook
look at it. Yeah.
He seems a little tired. Seems a little gone. Well, you know, he's got to eat something. Yeah.
Hollywood actor.
We just took a brief pause so I could get a gummy candy because I discovered years ago when I was using a lot of ketamine before getting diagnosed bipolar, and now I'm on the right medication. I had horrific dry mouth. I went to go say hi to Crystal at Bethnal Green's Working Men's Club. And when I was in London, I should add. And then I went back. And as soon as I got back there, I was like, oh my God, my mouth is fucking, it's like and I was like, do you have any like, so, and I was laughing because I said, I'm sorry, my mouth is so fucking dry right now. And I thought it was hilarious. And it was. And then I looked over, there was nothing to drink except there was some booze there. And then there was a pack of Haribo. And I went, as soon as I had one, I was like, oh my God, that's the solution. So then when I would go out and have Kay in my jacket, in my coat pocket, there was a little slit pocket. I had like a tiny little baggie.
Gummy bears.
Yeah.
I love that. I love gummy bears. Gummy candy is my favorite kind of candy.
Oh, it is? Any flavors in particular?
I love the sour like worms.
Yes. Yeah.
Those gummy bears too are just my favorite.
So you like the sour candy.
And the peach mango rings, like the peach rings. Very me.
Do you like to go to Dylan's Candy Bar and just go wild?
The thing is, I don't really like candy. But if I eat candy, it'll be those.
See, I'm on the other side of the fence. Chocolate. I can. Oh, yeah. And that's also my kryptonite.
I just hate getting dirty. I like and chocolate melts in my hand so easily. And I just hate, like, I'll get it on my shirt. Like, I hate getting dirty.
I eat it with a paper towel on my hand because it just always happens. And by the way, kids, do not eat chocolate in bed. There's no way to explain it. Anyway.
That's not chocolate, Eddie.
Yeah. And you can't go, that's just chocolate. They go, sure it is. Sure it is. Yeah. But in that, Allie, what's your romance pattern?
You know what? I actually, I just had my first serious relationship like in 2019 and we broke up last year. That's like really been my first realist boyfriend relationship. And, it was okay, but it wasn't like amazing.
What wasn't amazing about it?
I think just I allowed a lot of stuff to happen, or I allowed myself to be okay with a lot of red flags, you know, and I allowed myself to be treated in certain ways. And as I say, I accepted half measures in a way, like
sure.
But I think it was just my first time in a relationship, so I was kind of learning what I liked, what I didn't like, and I think where I'm at today is I don't think I have time for a relationship. Like being in that relationship taught me that relationships require a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And I don't have a lot of attention to spare with how hard I work.
Yeah.
And working hard right now is more important to me than being in a relationship. Ultimately, I would love to have my papi and like, you know, be held at night. But I think working hard right now is more important to me than that.
Well, you know, it's fulfilling yourself and then you have to be completely fulfilled or at least pretty close to it and pursuing it in order to.
Because if you can't fulfill yourself, how are you going to fulfill anybody else? Can I get a name then?
Where have I heard that? No. But that's exactly true. And also, like, if you sort of went, well, I'll just have the relationship, I'll just put this on the back burner, you'd be kicking yourself forever. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you have this opportunity and you've been making the most of it.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, 1000%. And I think, like, It's not fair to myself to be in a relationship right now, and it's not fair to the other person, as I learned with my last relationship.
Well, sure, yeah.
For me to be with them when I'm not fully like present for them,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't realize how needy people are. Like, I'm needy.
Yeah.
I can just imagine how much like, yeah, it's hard.
I think one of the key things too is like to figure out the things that we might point fingers at sometimes to go, oh, let's see, wait, do I do that too? Or do I have that thing? Because, something goes wrong. Well, it's like a car accident. They won't give all the fault to one side. I like to think of relationships or even friendships like that.
I say it's a tennis match. It's like
Yes.
you both have to keep the ball going, and who's not hitting the ball, who's not prepared with their racket, I read that in a book once, that dating is like a tennis match.
Yeah, it is. What about friendships? Have you found any of that affected by being on Drag Race or have notoriety, etc.?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I think that was the hardest thing. Like, my mom passed away while I was on Drag Race. My boyfriend at the time, dealing with that. And then a lot of my closest best friends, too, were all changed by me being on the show somehow, right? And, like, I can take accountability for my part on stuff, but I think what happened was like it was a mirror reflected onto them, and like my perceived success challenged their like reality of where they're at in their lives.
Yeah.
And that was hard for I think both sides to digest, and harder for I think them. And I think what I kind of had to do was like step away to give them space to figure out. I'm like it's not my fault that happened, but
Right.
like let me remove myself from the situation so you can handle what you need to handle. And like I love all of them from the bottom of my heart still to this day, but like I've had to like separate myself from a lot of people because it was just too much for them to and like I'm over here just like, hi, I'm just doing what I've always been doing. Like this was always my trajectory. Like
Yeah.
this is not a surprise, but it's hard for people to watch that happen to someone else.
Yeah.
And it's not like an ego or envy thing. I think it's just like what am I doing with myself? And it makes people act certain ways. I don't know.
Well, that's true. That is one of the biggest things that will sort of breed enmity, because if that brings up, they're having to consider what they're not pursuing, the script they're not finishing, that they talk about all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then there's that old adage, well, when you get notoriety, fame, whatever, people always say, oh, you've changed. And the person said, no, everyone around you changes.
Yeah. And like, that's so true. And like, what I would like for people to know is like, have some compassion for the person going through the fame, because there's so much you're learning that you are getting hit at all angles.
Yeah.
That the outside person doesn't really see or realize or has to go through. So all they're seeing is the success part. They're not seeing all the other stuff that comes with it that I'm also battling. Right. So like, that was the hard part with a lot of my people that I'm, not close with anymore. It's just like, you're just seeing the good stuff, but there's a lot of bad stuff I'm dodging and working through as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, it's hard, but they say like it's lonely at the top, and like I'm not at the top by any means, but it feels very lonely, and like you see in my hustle, like it's hard for me to maintain relationships with how hard I'm working. And like sometimes I try not to beat myself up for being selfish in that way, but it is a little selfish of me to pursue so hard, but I have to in order to survive, right? Like to pay my rent. Like if I'm not, I may have to move, back home or back, to Arkansas. Like who knows? Like I have to do this in order to stay alive. And that's like the survival, I feel, hustle you need to succeed out here.
Yeah. And also selfish, it's a funny word because it so often is used as a negative.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. People should be selfish to a degree. I mean, not completely narcissistic or anything, but like what's wrong with a little healthy dose of selfishness?
Mm-hmm.
Compassion is key for anyone. And I think it's a shame that a lot of times compassion isn't there for people who are either doing really badly or doing really well, because people a lot of times cannot face, well, someone's not doing well, see a friend or someone they know not doing well, because if they're doing really well, it's too freaky.
Yeah, I think the ego just strives off of like this compare and despair idea, and like they want, and I mean it's the same reason why I feel like people comment negatively on Twitter and all that stuff, right? Like they want to bring you down so they feel better about themselves. I think it's that.
Well, yeah, that is a whole thing, because really, where's the motivation to do something like that? Because If you don't like something, just keep scrolling.
Just keep going.
Moving.
Yeah.
Keep on moving.
It's like it's this thing that makes you want to feel like you have a one up on someone, right? And
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Did you ever deal? I mean, I feel like everyone does. Did you ever deal with any kind of bout of self-pity during the times where you were hustling, but maybe not getting where you wanted to get at?
Yeah, of course. I feel like that's why I had quit drag at the time that I had quit drag and was trying to pursue being a Survivor contestant. Like that was my
wow, okay.
that was my trajectory. But I mean, I think just as a creative and a performer, like that is just, you know, part of the journey is having that.
Did you ever try out for any other reality shows?
Yeah. I mean, I was on the reboot of Legends of the Hidden Temple before I was on Drag Race.
Oh wow, okay.
I had the option to be on Wipeout.
Wait, the thing where you have to go over all the obstacles and then oh my god,
yeah,
I love that show.
Supermarket Sweep. I mean, yeah, I was in line for all these game shows before Drag Race ever even happened. But today, I would love to be on Big Brother or Survivor. Like Survivor is my ultimate like dream. I would love to play Survivor one day.
Big Brother's amazing, just because of the absolute lack of privacy and how hypnotic the show can be. Like I've checked into the live feed sometimes.
Oh, the live feeds are so much fun, and just like it's just fun having like a real time like drama, right? Of like what's happening in there, what's going on, that you can just tune in and watch at any time. Like I love that. It's a Truman Show. Like
you know exactly.
Yeah.
That the one time I really got hooked in was the year that Michelle Visage and Perez Hilton were on the
Celebrity?
UK one. Yes,
Oh.
I just could not get enough of it because he was just flaming out.
Oh, I didn't watch that season.
Oh, it's wild. Just look at some highlights online. Don't spend the 150 hours that I did watching the show. But what shows are you digging now?
TV shows or reality shows?
Any of them?
Honestly, I don't have a lot of time to sit down and watch shows, but I watch Survivor. I'm watching Survivor right now. I'm watching.
You've seen every season, I bet, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
I can't really recall a lot of them because at this point there's been so many and there's a lot of contestants. So, but I love the gameplay and the strategy that goes into it on top of just having to survive. Like I love that aspect. And then I'm watching X-Men, the animated series at the moment. I'm a little behind, but those are the only two things I'm watching.
I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes I get totally behind on new films because sometimes when I just need to like unplug and do something, I'll watch like an old, particularly completely unknown to me movie, like an Italian cop film that's like extremely violent and just insane because it's just so far away from anything I'm thinking about or have been thinking about. What's your mode to go into when you're feeling a kind of way that maybe at a younger age might have been the thing that happens before using? And I know that it's been a long time since then. So what, I guess not coping mechanisms, but what are your soothe things in life?
Like today or back then?
Well, actually, let's do both.
Actually, what I'm learning, and like as an adult and a creative, like what I'm learning is that going back to my original soothing, like TV and film music, like dictates how I should move today. Like it reminds me of who I am in a way, because like those earlier like years were formative for me. So like when I channel and snap back into those moments, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm reminded of who I am, and I can move forward remembering like that's who I am, you know. And I think a lot of that for me was like movie musicals like Dreamgirls, Fame, High School Musical for me, In the Heights, Wicked, a lot of Broadway musical theater.
Incidentally, High School Musical was originally going to be Grease 3.
What?
It went through a lot of adaptations. There was a plan for Grease 3, and they were going to do a spin-off TV series well before The Rise of the Pink Ladies. Then Grease 3 went through adaptation, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
You know what's so cool? I forgot. Well, I haven't brought this up or said this, but like going back to like my formative years growing up and what I would watch, a lot of what I would watch, I have worked with those creators, those dancers, those choreographers. Like when I watch So They Can Dance, you know, I Mark Kanumara, who I watched on So They Can Dance, choreographed my last music video. Amazing. I see him everywhere all the time. And like I watched him and now I'm working with him. Danielle Jones from So You Think You Can Dance, she became one of my teachers at AMDA, one of my last couple years. Yeah. And like High School Musical, it literally was like my favorite. And I was like obsessed. Kenny Ortega, who I realized did Hocus Pocus.
And choreographed Xanadu.
and choreographed Xanadu. I remember after I graduated scholarship, I went to an audition for like this Latin telenovela like opera. They were like casting dancers for it.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for Kenny Ortega because he was directing it. And Kenny Ortega stopped the audition and pointed at me and said, "Where have you been?" And
Wow.
I was like, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Where have you been? Why have I never seen you before?" And in that moment, like, I didn't need to book it. I didn't need to book anything else. Like, Kenny Ortega, like the creator of these, High School Musical, like, is like kind of like praising me in that moment. And like all my hard work from getting sober to doing the scholarship and like AMDA, like all of that in that moment was like, I got everything I ever needed in that moment. I didn't end up booking it, but like to have that acknowledgement from him was like beyond anything I could have ever asked for.
And those are the moments, especially in lower times, you can think about those and go, no, let's keep pushing.
Exactly. 1000%. That was like probably one of my highlights of my career is Kenny Ortega like pointing me out. And like I don't know if maybe he just wanted to have sex with me or like or thought I was hot.
Doesn't matter.
Like the acknowledgement alone is like, they say never meet your heroes, but in that moment, like it didn't go anywhere past that, but to have that moment was
it's a perfect exchange.
Super magical.
Perfect exchange.
Yeah.
No, I know I've met many of my heroes and like Mike Chapman and a bunch of people who are now really good friends because you're into the same stuff. That's what it is. You're into the same stuff. And that's one of the reasons I keep all this stuff around because it is my inspiration, and I get to see it every day, even when it just becomes wallpaper in a way. It's there and the energy is coming off of it. And I've actually chatted or will chat with people involved in that, and that, and that one. My friend made that movie.
You see, I love it. And like, isn't that the magic of Hollywood, right? And like
Yes.
being in LA, it's like this media I've consumed ever since I was little. Like I'm now working with the people who created that, right? So, and now I get to be the person creating that media for the next, little EsTitties watching. So I think that's just the great full circle of life.
Yeah. Do you do any outreach work with kids?
Ooh.
No.
Not really.
Nor do I. I mean, it's not
no.
like I'm not going. You should. You really,
I mean, I would love to be like a high school speaker one day. That would be really fun.
I'm sure you will. Yeah.
Not right now.
What was the toolkit thing I heard you talking about on another show?
Oh, that was Chemsex Toolbox. Chemsex Toolbox was it's this workshop that they're doing to help, spread the word of recovery for people struggling with chemsex in the UK. They call it chemsex there. Here we just
I didn't know until I heard that, and I heard you say, well, they call it, and I was like, don't they call it that here? What do they call it here?
I think it's more of a UK term that
Do
they use.
just call it sex here?
Literally, yeah. It's just called gay sex. Chemsex is just gay sex. Yeah, that's the term for it. It's like when you're using like drugs combined with sex. It's chemsex.
And the big problem with that, I mean, besides the obvious one, is that don't people sometimes get that fused into their mind in terms of the pleasure receptors?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And I think that's the problem. That's the hard part of it, right? It doesn't feel like we're doing anything bad because sex is a good thing. So, but yeah, coupled with it, and then if it gets out of hand, you just start doing this drugs by itself, right? So there is solution and help out there if you need it.
Do you find yourself getting into any workaholic things? I mean, because with the hustle, with the constantly needed push, do you find that if you're not working, you don't know what to do?
No. I love working, and I think there is a workaholic syndrome, but I think it's necessary in order to survive here.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially with how expensive everything is nowadays. So, no, I think I balance it nicely with, my sin of hooking up.
See, there you go. It's like working out. You know what I mean? You got that hooking up. So yeah, you on the grinders quite a bit?
Oh yeah, I love it.
That's great. It's a public resource. That's how I like to think of it.
I mean, it's annoying, but
what's the most annoying thing you think about? Or rather, Grindr has to offer?
What's weird is like I travel a lot for work, right? And like going to small towns, I'm like a 20 out there, but then I come to LA and I'm like a 1, right? And so there's just so much. There's so many available, and like you can step into a different block and your entire grid can change. So I think that's the hard part, is just and everyone's beautiful here, right? So it's like there's a lot more competition.
I'd say you're much higher than a 1. So
well, thank you, but it's hard. That part's hard, and I think that's more of like my insecurity thing for myself.
Well, for
right?
sure, yeah. I mean, we all have that stuff. I mean, it's funny. Do you ever look back at old photos and go, "I was look at that"?
Oh my god! And I thought I was so fat at the time, and I look back, I'm like, I wish I looked like that. Yeah.
Body dysmorphia is a wild thing. Hell of a drug. Hell of a drug. Yeah, and in West Hollywood too. It's like
Oh,
the
it's even
honey pot.
worse. Yeah.
Well, but also like you open up Grinder and it's like someone's so close. You're like, wait, are they in my building?
Yeah. I would prefer that because I don't have to travel far.
Very convenient. But
Yeah.
then I remember thinking, well, what if it doesn't go right and you see them at the laundry?
Oh
Hey,
no, and I love a story. Like I love
Well-
hookup stories, so I'll go through with stuff just for the story afterwards. It's fun for me.
pick one of your favorite, let's say, things that went sideways kind of hookup story.
I think one I haven't shared yet is
Ooh.
like, I was on Craigslist back in the day with my college roommate, and this guy wanted to hook up, and I was like, well, I have a friend. He's like, oh, I have friends here too. Come over. He gave me the address, and we walk over, and there's a giant big rig parked on this like residential street, and the big rig's lights are on, and I'm like, what? And then my friend is like, we're not going in there, and I was like, yeah, we are. Like, he's inside. Come on. And so the guy comes out from in between like the front part of the big rig and the driver's seat. Like he comes out of the rectangle box, and like he's like, come on, and lifts me up, and then we go in there, and my friend is like freaking out. He's like, I'm not letting you go in there alone. I'm like, well then come on. And then like we walk through this dark like makeshift kitchen on the inside, and then we go into the back of the big rig, and there's like two guys smoking meth.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't doing that at the time, but
Yeah.
they were smoking meth, and they were watching porn, and they were naked, and there was like a sling, and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. My friend was like, we're getting the fuck out of here right now. And I was like, fine. So my friend drags me out, and I was like, and then we start running because the guy starts chasing us.
Oh, God.
So
oh,
I'm
God.
like, oh my God. But then, looking back, I'm like, who steps into a big rig? Like,
Yeah.
girl, what's wrong with you? And my friend knew that, but I was like, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo,
Yeah, yeah, and it
so-
took three times of like, we have to
Go.
get
No,
out of here.
1000%. 1000%. That's like one of my favorite stories.
Was he clothed when he was chasing you?
Honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Maybe he wasn't. I don't know.
That's a good one to sort of blot out the details.
Yeah. You can fill in the blanks yourself.
But generally, it's a much more pleasant time.
Usually, I think, I don't know. I like
One
to
or two of them pretty good, and then the rest, yeah.
Yeah. I think most of the time my hookups are fun. I think I'm
What's
good
the
at what
most
I do.
disappointing thing you've run into in a hookup besides the big rig? Just something that's like, oh, Christ.
Personally, for me, is like when they make me take off my shirt and then I can tell they're not into me anymore. Like that is my biggest like, oh dang, that hurts.
The thing I hate is someone deciding that reciprocity isn't part of the process.
What's that? Oh,
Like-
reciprocating?
Yeah, like they
Yeah.
came and then they're like,
Oh, and then they're
like
done.
just half-assing it. I don't know. Pun intended? I don't know. Anyway, that kind of thing. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, I just want, especially if it's here, I'm like, yeah,
You
leave.
came to my place. Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah.
This is my
yeah.
place. Come on, make sure. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be the one doing all the stuff if you're here.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah, we could taking care of that anyway. So, anything
Sometimes
else?
I find just masturbating is better.
Yes,
than
exactly.
Hunting for it for hours.
The worst thing is something was about to happen, falls through, and then you're on the hunt. Then nothing good can come out
the horrible
of
cycle of being a man.
that.
Yeah.
Also, that's the time, folks. If you're not sure, just stop.
and jerk off.
Yeah, then go to
Get
bed.
it. Just do it yourself.
Yeah.
Because the minute you do it yourself, you're like, the minute I do it myself and I'm done, I'm like, I can go to the gym. I can go get my groceries.
yeah.
I can do my errands. I can do everything else I need to do.
Yeah,
It's
the
just
last
like-
thing on your mind is I got to get back on that app and check it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anything else that you'd like to add before we close out? This has been a fabulous chat, and I want to thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. When is this going to come out?
I was going to either put it out this week or next week.
Oh, fierce. Okay, I'm performing WeHo Pride at Out Loud on the main stage June 1st, so come see me perform. My EP, Homegirl, I have an EP out that dropped 2 months ago. It's 4 songs. Check it out. I have a music video called Boots. I have a video called for my song Boppy coming out this month. And then just keep in touch with everything I'm doing on my socials. My Instagram's at EsTitties, and you can buy my merch at estitties.com/shop.
Sounds perfect. And actually, before we go, I want to ask, when did you get into the recording of music again, like the version that you're doing now? Was it right after Drag Race or was it before? I'm a little cloudy on that.
I made music. I started my first like dip into music during the pandemic. It was kind of like my call to my activism in the way. It was like, how can I lend my voice when like my voice isn't necessary, but like I have something to say.
Yeah.
Which was "Shut the Fuck Up, Karen." That was my first.
Right,
first song
yeah.
that I made. So that was my first time jumping in with my songwriter Ronald Keaton. He's amazing, and he's the magician behind "Find Your Light" and "Boots" and I love working with him. And I started music after Drag Race because after Pride last year, performing Pride, I was on some major stages, like in front of some giant audiences. And I was like, why am I lip syncing other people's music?
Yeah.
So I was like, I saw Shea Coulee perform at Market Days last year, and she just did her entire like discography with 2 dancers. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So I kind of curated some music that I can be performing live at Pride events. So book me for your Pride this summer, honey. I got a beautiful set with dancers and choreography and everything. And my music is very, I think, Pride relevant. Like, it makes you want to dance. It's a good time. You feel sexy to my music.
Has a message.
Yeah, all of it. And it's very me.
Well, fantastic. Well, we enjoy very much you. So thank you very much, Salina EsTitties, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.